Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and be welcome. Thank you for being here. First notice, as it is ordinary in the Libe Committee, we're having an extraordinary Libe Committee meeting in this plenary session in Strasbourg. Monday evening, pretty heavy. We've got such a workload. Please, try to enter the room in silence, please, because we're trying to get started. We've got a busy agenda to go through. Two actually important points in the order of the day to go through. But getting started with the adoption of the agenda, not to have any delay, we deem, if no objections, the draft agenda is adopted. And the announcements. First, the linguistic profile. Every language but Gaelic, Croatian and Maltese, in passive mode only, are available. But we've got, as first substantial point, this late evening session of our Libe Committee and a structured dialogue point with Vice President Margarita Schinas, Vice President for promoting the European way of life of the European Commission. First of all, be welcome. We're honoured to have you here. And we're honoured particularly to have the first chance to have an exchange of view ever since you have been confirmed in your portfolio and appointment. We wish you the best luck for the challenging times ahead. And we look forward to keep up to a close cooperation in important matters falling under your huge portfolio, notably regarding asylum and migration, including inclusion, integration, which in our view, you surely understand, is what promoting the European way of life is about, as well as internal security for the future of Schengen. In the frame of this first structured dialogue, we will set the pace for future exchange, regular exchange of views with Libe members. We're also welcoming to hear firsthand Vice President Schinas' priority actions in the first months of his mandate, including the announced Pact on Asylum and Migration, which we understand has already set off along with Commissioner Johansson. We had the opportunity to have a first exchange of views with her just recently. We heard last week from Commissioner Johansson that we hopefully build on that first exchange. Meanwhile, the committee coordinators have also decided to submit in the form of a letter an input to the process of reflecting on the Asylum and Migration Pact, which should be ready after the winter break. On security, we would like to highlight that we are looking forward to hearing about the Commission's plans regarding the future of the EU internal security strategy, which we'll be discussing in Libe early 2020. So first, we will hear from our Vice President here for the next 15 minutes, and then we will have an opportunity to exchange views, starting with the usual round for coordinators and the rest of the members willing to intervene. I remind you that the time frame of this first part of this evening session is from 7:30, we got started, to 9 p.m., because up until then we will having this focus concentrating on Vice President Schinas, and following that we will be having Commissioner Reinders for Justice and the Finnish Presidency, Minister Tuppurainen, delivering on matters related to rule of law. Poland, Hungary and Malta are on board. So please have it in mind, because that will be the next hour and a half. So keeping in mind this time frame, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President López Aguilar. Honourable members, thank you for having me before the Christmas break and on a day which I understand is particularly busy for you. Last time we met on the 3rd of October during my confirmation hearing. The center of gravity of our exchanges was on intentions. Today, I'm coming here in front of you for the first time since then with the ambition to start discussing with you actions or the way towards actions. And I repeat now, as I did then, that for me, having a regular, frank and substantial exchange of views with Libe is vital, is crucial. What I very quickly intend to do tonight is to mention three families of issues. First, migration, asylum and the Pact, then security, and then inclusion and the link to the, how should I put it, the non-Libe part of my portfolio. Starting with migration. I know that I'm speaking to very knowledgeable people here. Europe did a lot on migration, but did not do all. And I think you would agree with me that we now need a step change. President von der Leyen entrusted me with coordinating the work on this new pact on asylum and migration, which is, let's face it, the last missing link, but an important missing link of the overall puzzle that an EU, a comprehensive EU migration policy would represent. The word pact is a very noble word. It's a very noble term. So we have to give it content, as is the case with all noble words and terms. We have to find a new consensus on how we collectively manage and shape the realities of migration. And we also need to make sure through the pact that we can convince our people that Europe is able to deliver on something that is now shaping our way of life, our societies, our behavior, our politics across the globe, across the continent. First, to do that, to move towards the pact, I think it's important that we first listen. And this is precisely what we started doing with Commissioner Johansson. We started from Athens and then we went to Berlin, Paris. We will be in Budapest next Thursday, and we will continue this tour of capitals. And this part of this listening exercise is very much our engagement with your committee. Our impression from these first contacts on the way to the pact, as well as by my discussions with the Minister of Justice and Home Affairs in the Justice and Home Affairs Council on the 2nd and 3rd of December, was rather encouraging. We sense that there is now emerging a shared understanding that we cannot afford to fail on this again. Failure is not an option. And the overall impression we got from this early contact is a convergence around two fundamental notions. First, that the pact will have to be a comprehensive one, a holistic one. And second, that we will get nowhere unless we ensure the right balance between solidarity and responsibility. I know that we are now at a stage which is not very easy to speak about the exact structure and content of the pact. But I think I can share with you our early understanding on certain key elements that would have to figure and shape the way it will look like. First of all, we must apply a whole-of-route approach, ensuring that internal and external aspects of migration are inextricably linked and cannot be addressed separately. A new pact means making our external borders management strong enough to support the area of free movement so emblematic of our union internally. And the starting point for this would require the acceleration and the operationalization of the European Border and Coast Guard Regulation and stepping up Europe's fight against smugglers and traffickers who exploit human misery for profit. It also means that we would need an effective system of returns for those who do not have the right to stay. And it also requires putting in place asylum procedures that are more efficient and robust, addressing convincingly the problem of secondary movements. Also, the political link between Schengen and asylum is clear. We must address the shortcomings of the asylum system first to re-establish confidence and trust and being able to return to a normally functioning Schengen area. We also need to agree on legal pathways to Europe to equip our labour markets and industries with the right talent and skills through legal migration, building on pilot projects and positive experiences that we have managed to establish so far. And finally, it would require building comprehensive partnerships with countries of origin and transit by mobilizing everything we've got. Not only money and investments, but also trade, visa, mobility, Erasmus scholarships, everything that Europe can offer as part of a win-win partnership with the countries of origin and transit. We visited also Turkey last week. Turkey is a key partner of strategic importance and a crucial player in a volatile region, hosting close to 4 million refugees. No country on earth can host more number of refugees than Turkey today. We reiterated the importance of the EU-Turkey statement, and we have been rather timely to ensure that all 6 billion euros of the facility for refugees in Turkey have now been fully committed. And let's face it, in an increasingly difficult overall context for EU-Turkey relations, migration is one issue which both Europe and Turkey must continue to engage constructively, as the ministers and this House have repeatedly stated. Let me now come to security. Coming to our security agenda, I took a firm commitment with you last October that we will prioritize both traditional and modern threats, and I stand by this commitment. Next year, we will put forward a new strategy for internal security that tackles areas with a strong cross-border dimension, such as terrorism, organized crime and cybercrime, stepping up law enforcement cooperation, and closing down information gaps. Very much linked to this, we will look at Europol's mandate. Let me take this occasion to reiterate the importance of a swift agreement on a regulation to prevent the dissemination of terrorism content online, which we think is essential to halt radicalization and violent extremism. Our security strategy will also include measures to step up the fight against serious and organized crime, taking account of the ways technological progress has modified their operations. And in the fight against cybercrime, we will pay particular attention to the protection of the most vulnerable citizens. Child sexual abuse online has experienced an exponential growth, and we are working on targeted proposals to address it decisively. But the evolving nature of security threats calls for a cross-cutting approach going beyond the typical home affairs perspective of how we came to understand security, and going into the security dimension of policies ranging from digital, energy, transport, financial services, and health. And this is exactly where I see the clear added value of this Vice Presidency portfolio. We will continue to look and enhance our ability to prevent, detect, and respond to hybrid threats. We will continue to engage on improving our interoperability of our information systems, and we will develop a sound approach to fifth-generation networks that is fit for our global age, but also genuinely European. With billions of connected objects and systems carrying sensitive information, it is essential for Europe to ensure the cybersecurity and resilience of 5G networks. Protecting digital critical infrastructure should go hand in hand with protecting our physical critical infrastructure. We will invest in a flexible and risk-based approach to build resilience against all types of threats, from drones to insider threats, and to take better account of interdependencies between essential services. Let me repeat again the commitment I took on back in October, that every single of our future security proposals will integrate by design the full respect of fundamental rights, including the protection of personal data. This is a personal commitment. Fundamental rights will not be an ex post complement to our security work, will be the door that opens everything that we do on security. And in the same way that Europe shall not compromise on our security, we shall not compromise on our values. Dear President, dear colleagues and friends, I am now 10 days into this job, and since day one, when I have started working on this premise of a people-centric or anthropocentric portfolio, I was very clear that beyond the Libe part of my work, there are important streams of work, chantier, that would need to address, together with the commissioners in charge, further to the ones I have just mentioned. And let me again reassure you that together with Stella Kyriakidis, we'll work towards the comprehensive European Cancer Plan. Together with Maria Gabriel, we will put forward a set of actions to make the European education area a reality by 2025. Together with Nicola Schmidt, we will be updating the European skills agenda, filling skill shortages and supporting reskilling and upskilling. And my responsibility in bringing all these elements together is to ensure that we are in a position to woven into one single fabric what a resilient and cohesive society of tomorrow will need. Protection, security, skills, mobility, capacity to cope to a very rapidly changing environment. And it goes without saying that we will present specific proposals for the integration and inclusion of third country nationals. These are the new Europeans that will be with us in the years to come, and we owe them the same level of protection and access as we do for our own citizens. Over the next months, I will work to further crystallize and operationalize each of these work strands, and I will do so in a way that ensures that they complement and reinforce each other, with the central objective of building more stronger, more inclusive, more cohesive, and more resilient European societies. I will seek your involvement and input through every step of this way, starting from the discussion tonight. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Vice President Schinas. Now, let's open the floor right away. Getting started with the usual round of coordinators. We get started by Mrs. Metsola for the EPP. Then there will be, I suggest, follow up with the rest of the members willing to raise hands, raise their cards. Please be noticed so that we can take note and put them, all of you, in order. Please, Metsola, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome here, Mr. Vice President. Both in your hearing on the 3rd of October and today, you have shown, by way of various examples, that your portfolio is a very extensive one, that of promoting the European way of life. I will focus first on security, and then I will have a last question on Turkey. And the first thing on security is about completing our security union, specifically when it comes to terrorist content online. Can you expand a little bit more on your plans to continue the fight against this type of content once the legislative process has been completed? And when we're talking in this area, we need to never forget the sensitivities that surround the limits between national security and the competence of member states in this field. But what more can we do to ensure better, fast and more effective sharing of information and intelligence among member states? And how will all this be affected by the United Kingdom's foreseen withdrawal from the European Union by the end of next month? And on Turkey, you mentioned that you met with President Erdogan some days ago. We saw that while you were there, arrivals to the Greek islands ground to a halt, but then immediately after you left, arrivals started in the hundreds. So can you perhaps give us a little bit of insight that you haven't given before? Is President Erdogan trying to send Europe a message? And if so, how, in your opinion, should we respond?
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Sippel for the S&D.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Schinas, for being here. I carefully listened to you, and I was not expecting a kind of a miracle. But to be honest, when you talked about security and about migration, I haven't heard many new ideas. I'm happy you talk about the holistic approach, an approach that this Parliament already decided during last mandate, where we clearly talked about asylum procedure, about legal migration, but also about better cooperation with countries of origin to look into their interests, to better inform their citizens what kind of chances they have and which not. You clearly talked about legal pathways to better meet our interests in the area of employment. I haven't heard that you are also talking about legal pathways for people who are in need of protection, so maybe you could add something on that. And regarding legal pathways for migration, having in mind the stop in the debates about the blue card, are there already ideas how to overcome that stop in the debate? I also agree with you that return always has been part of our asylum procedure, but of course return is the end of the asylum procedure. First we have to ensure a proper procedure, and I would like to know how you would like to ensure that. Also because we have some new ideas, new old ideas, non-papers, including a paper from the German government talking about a kind of transit zones at external borders, and I really would like to have some more ideas what you believe precisely how they should look like and how they should be organized. You also mentioned that there might be no other country to have so many refugees and migrants like Turkey, and I think that's totally not true. Compared to their citizens, I think a country like Lebanon has taken even more migrants on board, and there are many African countries who have and are hosting a bigger number of refugees than Turkey. So I think we should not lie. A last point on security. Security is important for all our citizens. When talking about cybercrime, I'm really tired of always listening that cybercrime is so important to fight against because of child sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse clearly is a crime we never can accept. But the real abuse is taking place in real life. We shouldn't forget about that. So police investigation into that is only the last point. So I think we need to become, I'm sorry, Chair, we need to become more better to investigate and even prevent in real life, and we shouldn't take that example as an excuse to totally go into the privacy of all of our citizens. Thank you.
Excuse me. In case there's need to remind it every time we open floors, have it in mind, there's at least 20 of you willing to intervene. If we are going to make it in 1 hour and a half, which is the scheduled time for this particular debate, let's try to refrain ourselves and shoot our questions the sharpest and the quickest possible in 2 minutes for the coordinators, 1 minute for the rest. That is a reasonable way to handle and to have you all on board. Mrs. in 't Veld for the Renew.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best, and very welcome, Commissioner, to your first appearance before this committee. I'll try and be brief. First of all, on the security strategy, I'd like to say something about the method, because in recent years, not to say decades, the approach has been very messy. The European Commission would put forward proposals one after the other without the necessary impact assessment, and I would like to suggest to this committee that we never accept that anymore. We're not going to work on any proposal unless it's been accompanied by the required impact assessment. The implementation is pathetic. Evaluation non-existent, and then, as very often predicted by this European Parliament, a long list of legislative or laws, basically, and agreements pushed by the European Commission has been scrapped subsequently by the European Court of Justice. Are you going to do better? Secondly, when it comes to security, you say you're going to focus on cross-border issues. But if you look at one of the deadliest scourges of this continent, it's domestic violence. 2,500 to 3,000 women every year die in domestic violence. I haven't seen any marches, I haven't seen any grand strategy with billions dedicated to fighting domestic violence. If you really want to save lives, you know, this is a topic. What are you going to do about that? On the Migration Pact, you and Commissioner Johansson are on a listening tour of the capitals. Well, that's wonderful. The European Parliament, however, is a legislator. We have taken position, we have negotiated in good faith with the Council, and now we are in a situation where the Council said, well, we don't know really what it is that we want. And then you're going on a listening tour of the capitals. Why don't you come to the legislator and see what we have done already? Because I don't think that we should accept that the legislative work that we have done with the support of hundreds of millions of European citizens will just be discarded like that. We will not accept that. And then finally, you are now the Commissioner, no longer for the protection of the European way of life, but the promotion of the European way of life. Okay, I can see that makes you very happy. We call you our favourite lifestyle coach in the European Union. I would like to hear from you. How are you going to protect us from internal threats to the European way of life? That means our values laid down in Article 2 of the treaties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, it'll be for the Greens.
Yes. Thank you. I would also like to congratulate Mr. Schinas, because we see him here now for the first time with his appointment. And I would like to underline the urging message of Mrs. in 't Veld to comply with the institutional agreement, to come up with impact assessment when there is significant impact of certain legislation, and also to comply with the obligation to release evaluation reports in the way that is provided in our legal instruments. And I hope that Mr. Schinas is willing to commit here this evening that he will do so. Then I have a question on asylum. The priority of Mr. Schinas is to find consensus on asylum with the Member States, together with Johansson. And then, therefore, it was as a surprise for me that not that the first visit was Greek island, but the second visit was Turkey, instead of the capitals of the Member States. So that was surprising, but of course many Syrian refugees are depending on a hosting policy by Turkey. Their country is not only destroyed, but Assad has also regained control, and many refugees fear for his policy and for revenge once they would need to return. Now, despite this, as we all know, that Erdogan has threatened 1.5 million Syrian refugees to deport them to northeast Syria, to a so-called buffer zone, and it may be silent now, but Erdogan is still continuing with preparing the deportation of those Syrian refugees. And therefore, I have a few concrete questions on that. What did you exactly agree with Erdogan? Do you consider the buffer zones as a safe place where Syrian refugees can be returned? Can you guarantee that Erdogan will not send Syrian refugees to northeast Syria? And what will be the consequences for the EU-Turkey deal if he will start doing so? And maybe more in general, how exactly will the Commission monitor the human rights impact of those partnerships with migration in third countries? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. For the ID, it will be Onorevole Tardino.
Grazie Presidente, grazie Commissario. Commissario, lei è recentemente stato in Turchia insieme alla Commissaria Johansson e ha tenuto a sottolineare come la visita sia stata un'occasione per dimostrare che l'Unione Europea considera la Turchia un suo partner strategico, con cui cooperare anche in vista dello status di Paese di candidato. Noi crediamo invece che sia stata l'ennesima occasione in cui l'Europa ha prestato il fianco a Erdogan e si è piegata al ricatto di continua domanda di finanziamenti, con i soldi dei cittadini europei, attuato con l'ultima imprevedibile gestione dei flussi migratori che sta alla base dell'accordo UE-Turchia. Abbiamo infatti assistito a transiti irregolari con la Turchia che sostanzialmente ha fatto il bello e cattivo tempo nella decisione di quando e come aprire i confini. Immagino allora siete andati a rassicurarli circa la conferma che il flusso di denaro proveniente dall'UE non si fermerà, circa un totale di 58 miliardi di euro a partire dal 2002 in poi, e non ci sembra che questo Stato rispetti lo stile di vita europeo. Sul nuovo pacchetto UE per l'asilo e la migrazione che presenterete la prossima primavera, lei stesso ha riconosciuto il fallimento della politica europea sulla modifica del regolamento di Dublino e mi pare che questo sia sotto gli occhi di tutti. Mi chiedo e le chiedo che cosa farete da qui alla primavera. Sarete effettivamente capaci di presentare una proposta risolutiva del problema, visto che ad oggi non ci è dato modo di conoscere nulla? In primis dei paesi di confine lasciati soli, nonché come, sulla base di quali presupposti pensate di fare convogliare una maggioranza capace di superare lo stallo che abbiamo visto negli ultimi anni. E infine sul tema dei finanziamenti volevo informarla che abbiamo chiesto alla Commissione europea tramite interrogazione parlamentare di fornirci dettagli su come vengono spesi i fondi europei attribuiti alle ONG, soprattutto per quelli operanti nel Mediterraneo. Non ci hanno risposto. Lei sa la risposta? Grazie.
Grazie Presidente. Commissario Schinas, prima di tutto desidero augurarle buon lavoro. Lei è probabilmente il componente della Commissione per cui nutro maggiori speranze e per un fatto di sostanza, non per un fatto di forma, ci tengo a dirlo. A quanto pare è bastato poco, è bastata la sostituzione di una parola con un'altra nel titolo del suo pacchetto per acquietare gli animi di coloro i quali attribuivano alla protezione dello stile di vita europeo una connotazione aggressiva, militarista, fascista, come se proteggere il nostro modo di essere, la nostra cultura, il nostro patrimonio di valori rappresenti un'aggressione nei confronti di qualcun altro. A me sembra una follia, ma questo è un mio parere. Comunque, adesso che la parola non è più protezione ma è promozione, vorrei capire in cosa cambierà la sua azione. Spero che non mi dica che non cambia in nulla, perché le ricordo che il sostegno nei suoi confronti da parte di alcuni gruppi parlamentari è stato proprio condizionato al cambio del nome. Resta il dubbio sulle competenze, soprattutto in materia di immigrazione. Ancora non ho capito quale sia la linea di confine tra lei e il commissario Johansson sul tema dell'immigrazione. Sarà forse d'accordo con me che l'immigrazione legale e sicura è la prima vittima dell'immigrazione illegale, ma intende per davvero contrastare l'immigrazione illegale, e mi riferisco soprattutto al tema dei migranti economici, che è un tema molto spinoso. Infine, sulla questione Turchia non starò anch'io a rigirare il coltello nella piaga. Mi sembra che sia stato questa visita in Turchia sia stata un segnale di sudditanza nei confronti di un partner poco affidabile e molto aggressivo.
Thank you, grazie. Now for GUE, it will be Cornelia Ernst.
Ja,
Yes.
ja hallo. Ich würde in meiner Muttersprache sprechen. Okay, als erstes, Mr. Schinas, möchte ich von Ihnen wissen, Sie haben gesagt, Sie wollen mit Frau Johansson die Koordinierung des Asylpaktes, Asylmigrationspaktes vornehmen. Was heißt das eigentlich? Was wollen Sie hier koordinieren? Meinen Sie koordinieren das Rumfahren in den Mitgliedstaaten und mal fragen, ob in Ungarn doch 3 Asylbewerber aufgenommen werden sollen oder in Polen? Oder wie muss man sich das vorstellen? Und wie wollen Sie mit uns umgehen? Für mich ist wirklich wichtig zu wissen, wir haben mit 2/3 in der letzten Legislatur einen umfassenden Dublin-IV-Vorschlag auf den Tisch gelegt. Einen progressiven, einen für jeden Mitgliedstaat auch an den EU-Außengrenzen progressiven Vorschlag. Im Übrigen auch für die Geflüchteten. Was wird damit? Schauen Sie da noch rein oder kommen Sie mit irgendwas völlig anderem? Wie gehen Sie mit uns also in dem Ganzen um? Und ist für Sie bei Ihrem Koordinierungsvorschlag das Recht auf Asyl, das individuelle Recht auf Asyl nach der Genfer Flüchtlingskonvention noch ein Bestandteil, weil Sie nur von Returns gesprochen haben? Oder ist das für Sie jetzt nicht sehr relevant? Das ist der erste Punkt. Der zweite. Ich möchte gerne wissen, wenn Sie evaluieren und wenn Sie sagen, grenzüberschreitende Kriminalität, das muss überprüft werden, evaluiert werden, evaluieren Sie auch die Kriminalität gegenüber Geflüchteten an den EU-Außengrenzen. Ich war jetzt in Kroatien und in Bosnien. Was ich dort erlebt habe, ist die Hölle, kann ich nur sagen. Es ist die Hölle. Grenzer haben die Geflüchteten ausgenommen, ihnen Geld, Handys weggenommen, ja zum Teil die Jacke und sie durch Flüsse gejagt. Diese Art der Menschenrechtsverletzungen, werden die von Ihnen untersucht oder nicht? Dritter Punkt. Haben Sie jemals evaluiert oder haben Sie das vor, die finanziellen Mittel, die an die Türkei gehen, dass die auch wirklich dorthin gehen, wohin sie fließen sollen? Gibt es diese Übersicht? Haben Sie da Einfluss drauf? Wissen Sie genau, wohin diese Gelder gehen? Und das Letzte, Sie haben kein Wort zu Resettlement gesagt. Aber über Resettlement müssen wir reden. Wie soll das aussehen? Wie stellen Sie sich das vor? Bitte sagen Sie dazu etwas mehr. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank. Now, I suggest that we go right away. For the sake of the timing, I think that's the best way forward to have you all on board. But please try to refrain to 1 minute. To 1 minute. Okay? Make it in 1 minute, because there's more than 20 of you, and there's surely need for Vice President Schinas to properly respond to the questions that are to be raised. Okay, we get started by Mrs. Botsenberg-Bronidi. The floor is yours.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, κύριε Πρόεδρε. Κύριε Αντιπρόεδρε, καλώς ορίσατε. Ευχαριστούμε για την πρώτη διευρυμένη συζήτηση στα θέματα του χαρτοφυλακίου σας. Πράγματι, σας εύχομαι και εγώ καλή επιτυχία. Είναι μεγάλο το χαρτοφυλάκιο, είναι πολλές οι ευθύνες. Θα επικεντρωθώ στο 1 λεπτό σε μία συγκεκριμένη ερώτηση. Ακούστηκε μια κριτική που σας ασκήθηκε για την επίσκεψή σας στην Τουρκία. Προσωπικά, εγώ πιστεύω ότι ήταν αναγκαία η επίσκεψή σας στην Τουρκία και σε ό,τι αφορά την άποψή μου θα σας το ζητούσαμε. Γιατί όταν ζητούμε από την Τουρκία μια συνεργασία αποτελεσματική, ειδικά στο θέμα το μεταναστευτικό, θα πρέπει να συζητήσουμε και μαζί τους. Εδώ όμως έρχομαι να σας ρωτήσω ευθέως τι πρόκειται να γίνει με τη Συμφωνία Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης Τουρκίας, με το δεδομένο, κύριε Αντιπρόεδρε, ότι αναμφίβολα από πλευράς του Προέδρου Ερντογάν δεν τηρείται πλέον η συμφωνία. Και όχι μόνο δεν τηρείται, αλλά με τρόπο εξαιρετικά προκλητικό επισημαίνεται ότι μπορεί κατά το δοκούν εκβιάζει με τη συμπεριφορά προς αυτήν. Ευχαριστώ, κύριε Πρόεδρε.
Please, you all try to make it in 1 minute. Señor Moreno Sánchez.
Sí, gracias, presidente. Estilo telegráfico. Bienvenido. Le agradezco su comparecencia, señor comisario, vicepresidente, y suerte en sus nuevas funciones. ¿Qué puede hacer la Comisión para cambiar, tenemos que trabajar todo, la percepción que hay en algunos países, algunos ciudadanos sobre la inmigración? No es una amenaza, no es un problema, es un desafío, es una necesidad y una oportunidad. Y hasta ahora la Comisión se ha centrado sobre todo en la parte, digamos, más negativa, más coercitiva, el retorno, el control de las fronteras, la lucha contra los smugglers. ¿Qué se puede hacer en la parte más positiva? La inmigración legal, las directivas que se pueden poner en marcha, la migración circular también es importante, la integración de los migrantes. ¿Y qué opina de una idea que he puesto ya sobre la mesa, que haya un fondo europeo al que tengan acceso directamente las autoridades locales, los alcaldes de las ciudades, directamente a la Comisión con programas? Y por último, que me queda un segundo, sobre los menores no acompañados. Tenemos que trabajar en ello. Gracias.
Thank you. Congratulations, Vice President. Two quick questions. On migration. Within that pact, you have two very difficult balancing acts to perform. One internally between solidarity and responsibility, and I'm sure you're well aware of that, and one externally when you'll go to third countries to convince them to take returnees on legal pathways. And you've mentioned it yourself. But my question is about legal migration, labour migration offers that third countries expect. How will you convince member states to actually give you more than that, what they have done so far? You mentioned pilot projects. Pilot projects haven't really delivered a lot. Symbolically, they look good, but we have 15, 20, 30 places in each of the offers of member states, which is by far not enough. The second question relates to 5G. Who is taking up the work that was done by Commissioner King so far, and what will be your next steps on 5G? And do you consider that the train has left the station in terms of what some of the member states have already done? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madame Kanko, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, President. Commissioner, thank you for joining us and for stressing these important issues. You recently held what you described as a constructive round of talks with Turkey in Ankara. Turkey is, of course, hosting the largest refugee population in the world. There are figures from UNHCR from 2018, so I must unfortunately contradict my colleague from S&D about that. Turkey is really the one hosting the largest refugee population in the world, and have played an instrumental part in controlling the migration crisis. Following this trip, you reiterated the EU's commitment to continuing its engagement and cooperating with Turkey as a candidate country and as a key strategic partner and neighbour, something Erdogan himself has spoken negatively of. However, do you believe this is realistic when only a few weeks ago it was threatening to, quote, open the gates to Europe for refugees and asylum seekers if we did not allow them to proceed in Syria the way they wanted? That's not how friends and partners act towards one another. When building a new migration pact, how much do you believe we have to take into account the volatility of the actions of those on our external borders? And finally, do you believe that a country like Turkey could ever be a member of the European Union? Mr. Schinas, part of protecting the European way of life and our values is understanding that Europe is also about solidarity, trust and credibility, perhaps something to keep in mind when negotiating with Turkey in the future. Thank you.
Make it in 1 minute, otherwise we're in trouble. We're all in trouble. Make it in 1 minute, please. Mr. Ressler, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schinas, you definitely have a really broad portfolio, but I want to focus only on migration. And although this issue is also quite extensive, and we certainly need to look at the possible legal pathways, sustainable migration flows, and cooperation agreements with all the countries on the route, but also in the root cause of migration. We definitely have to do more also in fighting illegal migration and smuggling. And currently, at the external EU borders, we are having strong migration pressure. And my question would actually be, could you please expand a bit on what would be the Commission strategy for supporting countries on EU external borders, and especially how would you recognize the differences between different migratory routes?
Thank you. Madame Guillaume, 1 minute.
Oui, merci. Si vous nous proposez un nouveau pacte, c'est parce que les précédents paquets, plans, etc. n'ont pas réussi. Et s'ils n'ont pas réussi, s'ils ont été bloqués en trilogue, si ces textes piétinent, c'est parce que les États membres, pour beaucoup d'entre eux, ont bloqué ces textes. Et si je continue de dérouler, c'est parce que, en réalité, certains ne veulent pas accueillir des migrants. Donc, est-ce que vous pourriez nous confirmer si vous avez effectivement l'intention de retirer le texte sur Dublin, de retirer le texte sur procédure pour leur substituer autre chose, ce qui, d'une certaine manière, voudrait dire que seule la position des États prévaut et que la position du Parlement ne prévaut pas, et que vous y substitueriez une sorte de proposition sur un système de répartition depuis les frontières extérieures. Et si la réponse est oui, est-ce que cela veut dire qu'on aurait un système qui repose sur l'expérience de certains États membres, selon lesquels on considère que les migrants n'entrent pas sur le territoire, ils sont dans des zones d'attente, ce sont des centres fermés, et donc comme ils ne sont pas entrés, ce n'est pas le même droit qui s'applique, ce n'est pas le droit de l'asile, mais c'est simplement des décisions d'expulsion qui peuvent avoir lieu si les gens ne sont pas qualifiés pour rentrer. Donc pourriez-vous nous confirmer cela? Et deuxièmement, si cette question de la détention généralisée, puisque ce sont des centres fermés, est réellement éthiquement et juridiquement possible en vigueur, en lien avec les lois internationales.
Merci. Madame Keller, 1 minute.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire. Félicitations à mon tour. 2 questions. Les textes européens sur le droit européen de l'asile souffrent aujourd'hui de disparités dans leur application dans chaque État membre, puisque ce sont des compétences régaliennes. Votre Commission a-t-elle engagé un travail à ce sujet ou souhaite-t-elle faire un travail de mise à jour? Deuxième question, vous avez souligné l'importance des relations extérieures, des relations avec les pays d'origine et d'autres pays partenaires. Pouvez-vous nous en dire plus sur votre travail en commun sur ce thème avec le haut représentant, M. Borrell? Je vous remercie.
Sì, siete fantastici. 1 minute. Mr. Breyer for the Greens.
Mr. Commissioner, I've been listening very carefully to what you've said on the security strategy that you're going to propose to us, and I'm concerned because of past experiences that it will turn out to be a surveillance strategy rather than a security strategy. The argument usually goes, past legislation wasn't effective against crime, so let's have more of it. And I don't think this is very satisfactory. There is no evidence that we would live any safer in a surveillance state, so please be very careful when proposing this new paper. Now, the European Court of Justice repeatedly annulled legislation to record private information on our communications without any suspicion, data retention. And I would like to know from you, does the Commission have any intention to make a new proposal on data retention? And secondly, with a view to your recent visit in Turkey, can you update us on the state of play of negotiations on the exchange of personal data between Europol and Turkey?
Thank you. Mrs. Daly.
Thanks, President. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed at the lack of detail in your opening remarks and a little bit concerned at your sort of servile attitude to Turkey. Your statement that nobody has done more than Turkey in terms of refugees, unless you meant the role they played in making people refugees in the first place by opening up their borders and allow people to go in to Syria in an attempt at regime change there. But you then followed up that statement by saying that you're going to ensure an enhanced role for Europol. And again, like my colleague, in that context, I want to know, on your recent visit to Turkey, did you discuss the exchange of personal data with Turkey? You're aware that this Parliament has huge problems with that in terms of definition of crime and definition of terrorism. There has been no impact statement, and we hear that negotiations are at an advanced stage, but we haven't had any detail on that. I think that's absolutely critical. And in terms of online disinformation and that aspect, online disinformation really is being turned into, I suppose, speech that challenges the worldviews of those in authority. And where do you draw the line between, I suppose, protecting people and surveillance and sort of censorship?
Mr. Sikats.
Ja, vielen Dank. Eine Nachfrage zum Thema Internetkriminalität. Das Thema wurde ja vorhin so ein bisschen abgetan von der Kollegin von der S&D. Jeder, der den Bericht von Interpol zur Internetkriminalität im LIBE-Ausschuss ja verfolgt hat und zugehört hat, sollte ja begriffen haben, dass gerade durch das Internet der Verteilung von Kinderpornografie auch Vorschub geleistet wird. Und besonders der Austausch und die Vermarktung von Kinderpornografie durch das Internet wird ja durch das Internet begünstigt und auch ermöglicht. Vor diesem Hintergrund leistet Interpol ja eine sehr gute Arbeit. Deshalb meine Frage, Herr Kommissar, wie gedenken Sie, diese Arbeit weiter zu optimieren und Interpol entsprechend zu unterstützen?
Vielen Dank. Señor Ruiz de Besa, un minuto.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente, y muchas gracias también al señor vicepresidente por su explicación. Además de suscribir las palabras sobre el potencial y la necesidad de la inmigración para nuestros mercados de trabajo que ha expuesto mi colega Javier Moreno, yo le quería preguntar sobre cuál es concretamente su nuevo enfoque para sacar adelante el pacto migratorio. Usted ha dicho, lo que ha quedado claro de mis conversaciones con los Estados miembros es que no nos podemos permitir el fracaso. Pero una vía fácil para evitar el fracaso es abandonar toda ambición y abandonar, por tanto, la propuesta del Parlamento, aceptar el mínimo común denominador del Consejo. Yo creo que eso es inaceptable y por eso creo que es necesario que nos explique concretamente qué nueva dinámica cree usted que es posible como resultado de la ronda de conversaciones con los Estados miembros. Gracias.
Gracias. Herr Markert, eine Minute.
Ja, vielen Dank und herzlichen Glückwunsch. Ich werde auf Deutsch reden. Ich wollte sagen, dass in der letzten Woche Donnerstag ein Video veröffentlicht wurde vom Deutschen Spiegel, das nachweist, dass am Evros Pushbacks stattgefunden haben. Mindestens einer ist dort auf Video aufgenommen. Und man hat das Gefühl, dass sich die Beweise für Pushbacks zwar häufen, aber je mehr Beweise es dafür gibt, desto leiser wird die Kommission beim Beantworten der Fragen dazu. Und ich wollte Sie fragen, ob Sie das heute fortsetzen oder dazu was sagen, sich für Rechtsstaatlichkeit einsetzen wollen. Und das Zweite, was ich sagen wollte, ist, dass wir ja alle wissen, dass die Situation auf den griechischen Inseln nicht besonders gut ist. Beschämend könnte man auch dazu sagen, wenn man sich das anschaut. Und es gibt aber Leute, die mir Hoffnung geben. Leute wie Salam al-Din zum Beispiel, der das Team Humanity gegründet hat, der fälschlicherweise, wie sich vor Gericht herausgestellt hat, dann verhaftet wurde und im Mai 2018 freigesprochen wurde, wurden verschiedene Dinge zur Last gelegt, aber er war gar nicht schuld daran. Und nun ist er wieder verhaftet. Er soll jetzt eigentlich eine Gefahr für die öffentliche Sicherheit sein und abgeschoben werden. Und ich wollte Sie fragen, ob, wenn Sie den europäischen Weg zu helfen auch promoten wollen, ob Sie auch seinen Weg unterstützen wollen oder ob Sie sich nicht für ihn einsetzen werden.
Vielen Dank. Señor Barrena, un minuto.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Mr. Schinas, for joining us today. You surely are aware that some member states, and more precisely Spain, have recently passed legislation on online contents, and we are quite a bit worried on that. I know that you will surely say that it's too early, but I would like to ask you about your views on the next steps on online content regulation from a security perspective, whether you think that a legislative action is really needed, what you intend to do to step up the efforts to make the web safe, if this is ever possible, whether you think that the current rules, including the prohibition of general monitoring of private actors, are obsolete, and of course, what do you intend to do to make sure that freedom of speech and information, which include the freedom to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers, is respected? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weimars.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Commissioner Schinas, thank you for your elaboration here tonight. One of the things you said that I truly welcome is the focus on organized crime within the security strategy. And I also noted that you have gone on tour with my fellow Swedish colleague Ylva Johansson, and I'm sure you will have very important discussions with counterparts counterparts there. But one thing you may miss when you don't go to smaller places around Europe is the everyday experiences of everyday people, such as the mother at my child's kindergarten who told me that her family was victim of auto parts theft as well as burglary in broad daylight, victims of organized crime. And my question would be, what shall I answer her next time she asks me, what does the EU do to address my problems? Thank you.
Thank you. Onorevole Roberti, un minuto.
Grazie,
Prego.
buonasera commissario Schinas. Due domande secche. La prima, in tema di immigrazione. Lei ha accennato alla lotta ai trafficanti. Come pensa che la Commissione possa incentivare la lotta ai trafficanti? Per esempio, la missione Sofia nel Mediterraneo centrale sarà rilanciata o verrà definitivamente affossata come già sta avvenendo? Seconda domanda, sulla sicurezza. Lei ha parlato di energia, trasporti, salute come valore aggiunto per la sicurezza. Sono d'accordo con lei. Non l'ho sentita però parlare della corruzione internazionale e della lotta alla corruzione internazionale che incide direttamente sulla sicurezza dei cittadini in quanto strumento privilegiato delle organizzazioni criminali, consente di acquisire informazioni segrete o riservate, quindi è un problema anche e soprattutto di sicurezza. Che cosa pensa che debba fare la sua Commissione per incentivare la lotta alla corruzione internazionale? Grazie.
Grazie tante. Mr. McGee, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schinas, there is no country in Europe where anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobic attacks are not growing, stemming from the rise of far-right extremist movements, demagogues and fascists projecting a narrative of hate and fear. When I read your mission letter, I was honestly baffled to find out that while you intend to fight against anti-Semitism, which you most definitely should, there wasn't a single reference to Islamophobia. Yet your role in coordination of the EU future migration and security-related policies represents a unique platform for changing the narrative to break the rampant Islamophobic narrative which synonymizes migrants with terrorist threats. My time in the Parliament might almost be over, and this is why I'm asking you, will you have the political courage to openly counter anti-Muslim hatred in your work as Commission Vice President, dedicating the necessary focus and resources to make sure that the European way of life does not leave anybody behind?
Thank you. Right on time. Señor Buxadé, un minuto, por favor.
Sí, gracias. Intervendré en español. Gracias, señor comisario, por su intervención. Felicidades por su nombramiento. Brevemente, el compañero ha hablado de la islamofobia. Yo quería precisamente plantearle un problema que tenemos también en Europa y que atenta al estilo de vida europeo, que es el garantizar la libertad religiosa de los cristianos. Son constantes los ataques a las comunidades cristianas también en Europa. Segunda cuestión. Ayer mismo una de las ONGs que se dedica a trasladar a inmigrantes desde Libia a Europa, Open Arms, enviaba un tuit diciendo empezamos nuestra misión 72, nos vamos hacia el otro lado de la costa. ¿Piensa hacerse algo desde la Comisión para evitar esta intervención de las ONGs? ¿Quién va a defender, por último, el modelo de vida europea? ¿La Comisión tiene algún plan para ayudar a los Estados en las políticas de natalidad? Porque si no puede suceder que dentro de 5 años no haya nadie defendiendo el estilo de vida europeo. Gracias.
Mr. Buzelager, 1 minute.
Mr. Schinas, like you, I recently had the chance to travel to your beautiful home country, Greece, and I also went to the Greek hotspots. And so we both really know what the situation looks like. But just to paint the picture, it looks like thousands of people sleeping and freezing out in the open around the camps, lacking basic access to shelter, food, adequate medical care and even sanitation. So my question to you is here once again, as I asked Commissioner Johansson last week and didn't get a sufficient answer, will you bring the EU countries together and evacuate the most vulnerable people, including over 1,200 unaccompanied minors? Will you fight to improve the living conditions now in the camps and not by senselessly building more detention centres? On the islands, I saw people from across the world fighting for the dignity of these human beings stranded on the islands for years now, a fight that should be our fight. Are you willing to fight for these people?
Okay, thank you. And now, Honorable Bartolo. And that will be the final floor, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not missing anyone. Onorevole Bartolo,
Grazie
Vicepresidente
Presidente, signor Commissario. Mi chiedo se la Commissione abbia mai seriamente valutato le conseguenze del declino demografico dell'Europa e dello scenario che ci troveremo davanti al 2050. La sensazione è che o è questa e sia un problema a lungo termine che si preferisce ignorare. Infatti non si capisce perché quando si parla di canali di immigrazione legali si parla sempre ed esclusivamente di manodopera qualificata. Ma lei, Commissario, è davvero sicuro che l'Europa non abbia anche bisogno di un altro tipo di lavoratori? E poi, visto che nel dibattito si è fatto riferimento ai famosi non-paper, non pensa che i documenti finora sulla tavola siano fortemente sbilanciati verso una politica di rimpatrio? Perché nel documento, in modo particolare quello del suo Paese, della Grecia, insomma, fa riferimento solo ai rimpatri. Grazie.
Grazie. Now, I think we have completed the list of those who wanted to make their points, raise their questions, address their concerns to Vice President Schinas. Now, if you allow me, Vice President Schinas, I think you're perfectly going to make it. We still have some half an hour to go before the following track in this order of the day, which is quite busy. We're having Commissioner Reinders and Minister Tupilainen in order to address rule of law relevant points on Hungary, Poland and Malta. So I suggest, if you allow me, Vice President Schinas, that you do your very best in order to try at least devote a single thought, a single word on every question that has been raised. Because I know it's not an easy task, because I think the worst choice is simply ignoring some of them and you know, some kind of nurturing the concern that has already been expressed. So do your best in order to at least commit yourself to somehow delivering in writing additional comments as to those points that you are not in a capacity to fulfill for the half an hour to go, which is the left time for this initial part of the order of the day. The floor is yours.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your questions. In previous lives, I always followed Libe closely as an observer, but as an informed observer. And I had reasons to do that, because most of the things that have been debated here, sooner or later, were becoming issues that came across the policy departments in which I had the occasion to work. So I salute the vivacity and the live style of debates that shapes this committee, and I look forward to continue to engage with you in this wide range of issues that you have just mentioned. Let me start by the European way of life and to the many questions that still, one way or the other, revolve around this notion, and also, if I may say, this portfolio, which, as you know, is a new one. This does not exist before. Did not exist before. Contrary to the attempts by many people to project the European way of life as some sort of bulldozer concept that is there to bulldoze everything that comes across, or others who think that this is a binary choice, us against them, I never understood this concept in such a way. For me, the European way of life, and I think I had a chance to explain this in our engagement in the hearing, was always something of a mirror that represents what Europe today stands for, the way we are, the way we look, the way we live, and the way we want to continue living. We are now less than 8% of the global population. We account still for around 20% of the global wealth, and we spend 50% of social spending worldwide. This is the European way of life. So we can very well stay there and say that's okay, that's a model of society that suits us, or we can ask ourselves serious questions on how we can maintain this level of achievement over time. whether we are able to pass on this success that Europe represents today to our children and grandchildren. So I never interpreted this term as a term of exclusion, of hatred. For me, this was always about inclusiveness. And the question about protecting or promoting in a way has a certain meaning, which I can understand, because we live in European democracy, and this is something that this Parliament asked the President to consider, and she did. I understand and share that for some people the way that the verb protection assumes something of an aggression to which we have to answer back or protect. So the way that we use promotion is something more positive, more inclusive. I'm perfectly happy with that. And I must say that I have bought many books in my life, but very rarely I bought a book because of the title that comes in the first page. I always bought a book because of the author or because of the content of the book. And I would expect that people would judge this portfolio on the author and the content rather than the cover. Still in this question, because it also pertains to very valid questions on my relations with the commissioners, especially Commissioner Johansson, but also the other commissioners that are involved in these work streams, I must repeat what I said again in the hearing, that this is, as per my mission letter, a very specific set of tasks that I must require. I must to maximize and optimize the work of the commissioners working in my commissioners group. This does not mean replacing the commissioners. I have no intention or no ambition to replace the commissioner, but I have every single legitimacy, if you like, also coming from this House, to make sure that we deliver on everything that we promised to deliver. And everything we promised to deliver, from migration, security, the Pact, Cancer Action Plan, European Education Area, the Skills Agenda, these are specific commitments that I have to do with the commissioners, not instead of the commissioners. Now, coming back to the many issues that you have raised, and I have here kept very detailed notes, and I hope that I will not, that they will not betray me. Let me start first with security. I think I was very clear when I said that our future security strategy would be a strategy that would address everything that pertains to technological progress, but also to the traditional threats as we have known them. It would be wrong, in my view, to privilege one track at the expense of the other. We cannot do digital infrastructure unless we have meaningful responses on critical physical infrastructure. We cannot do cyber or internet unless we have convincing replies on threats to our ports, to our airports, to our nuclear plants. So all this would have to go together. And the emphasis on cross-border security threats is, I think, obvious, because this is where our legal bases are stronger. This is where we can make a difference also with the Member States and the Council, and this is where we can justify the added value of what the EU can provide. I have the fullest of respect to issues like the one mentioned by Sophie in 't Veld on domestic violence. I will work closely with Vice President Jourova and Commissioner Reinders on a new gender strategy, which is already announced by President von der Leyen. And it goes without saying that this issue would have to be addressed in this specific context. The same thing goes to the area of violence against rights, victims, refugees, vulnerable populations. This would be addressed. But I would like to caution against a certain view that it's either digital or physical, that it's either this or that. No, it has to be both, and it has to be linked into a single strategy paper. And I think it's reasonable to expect this in the third quarter of next year. Now, Again, on security, I do not share the fear that security means surveillance. I understand that there are fears of this being the case, but I think I was very clear that we shall not use fundamental rights as a sideshow when we're putting forward security proposals. We will not do that. I was very clear. I said that this is not an ex post addendum, an ex post annex. It is something that front loads. It's the key that opens security. And I think that we have already sufficient guarantees to make sure that this is the case. Then, let me come to Turkey, which is of interest to many of you from different perspectives, all of them fully legitimate and fully valid. First of all, let me tell you that we didn't decide to go to Turkey like this. We didn't pack a suitcase and say, why don't we go to Turkey since we're in Athens, why don't we go to Turkey? It didn't work like that. We had an extensive discussion with the Home Affairs ministers during the lunch of the Justice and Home Affairs Council, where we repeatedly sounded views from the ministers on the usefulness of such a visit, and we got a surprising degree of convergence, I would say a quasi-consensus from all member states that this is a visit that would be useful for Europe. Then, despite this, we didn't go without having an assurance that our visit would be well understood by our Turkish counterparts. And this happened because President von der Leyen had a long phone call with President Erdogan preceding our visit, in which it was made absolutely clear the context in which our visit would take place. We didn't go there to sort out the overall EU-Turkish relationship, which, as you know, is not at its highest moment. We didn't go to do geopolitics. We didn't go to sort out the war on Syria. But we went to convey three very simple messages that I can repeat here. First, we said, hi, we are the new team. And this may be more important than it sounds, because the degree of engagement with the outgoing team has not been always steady. So I think it was important that they see us as new interlocutors on migration. Two, we thank them, Mrs. Zippelt, because yes, this is the country with the highest number of refugees on earth. Probably not per capita, but certainly the highest number of refugees on earth, according to UNHCR data. And we thank them because we think that they make an effort, okay, with our support, but they host 4 million desperate people there. So it's something that I think we should at least recognize to them. And the third thing we told them is, look, we will continue to engage on migration because history, geography, and reality condemns us to do so. And yes, Mrs. Metsola, it is true that whilst we were there were 0 arrivals in the Greek islands. And when we left, there were 7 boats. But this is not a reason to stop engaging. This is a reason precisely to continue engaging in this very specific context of migration management. I repeat, this was not a discussion on geopolitics. It was not a discussion on data. It was not a discussion of the big issues on enlargement, on drillings. These are issues that are being dealt separately, but I think this commitment on migration was important, was necessary, and I would say overall it left a perspective open. We do not agree with Turkey on the way our free support, the refugee money, is used. They have another perception that this money should be paid directly to the state. As you know, we do not accept this method. We prefer to fund host communities, the UN agencies, and the many NGOs that are involved in this work. We also reimburse health care for refugees, but not upfront. we pay invoices that are put to us. So we have this disagreement on the way the money is spent, but on the overall utility of continuing engaging in a post-Frit horizon, now that the 6 billion have been fully committed, I think at the House, at the Council of Ministers, and I sense also in this House, there is a certain degree of convergence that it would be wrong to stop engaging with Turkey. Now I'm coming to the Pact, and the starting point for the Pact is an argument that it's not the first time that I hear it, and I think I also discussed it extensively during the hearing. By no means this new beginning would put on the side the valuable work done by this Parliament. We are fully aware that if there was some progress in the previous attempt, it was precisely because of you. And no, we're not coming here to listen to you as observers or commentators of policy. We're coming to you as legislators because your work and the successful work that you put into the 5 of these 7 texts is there and will not be lost. On the contrary, this will not be put again, will not start from scratch. This work will be safeguarded. But the starting point would have to be clearly the 2 fundamental texts in which agreement was not found. Again, this was not your fault, I'm fully aware of that, but objectively, Europe, the Union, failed to deliver the asylum, the Dublin reform and the procedures. So this would have to be at the heart of the new beginning. Together with the many other subjects that I mentioned, the idea is that we will put forward a package with things that will make sense to everybody. Because we need to build a consensus and we need to safeguard a commonality of interest around the Pact that prevents some member states to undo it. So we have to build a package and we have to safeguard the package. Now, there are many ideas already being submitted to us in writing. I understand that this House will also submit ideas. All these ideas are very welcome. This is the moment where we need this raw material to build the final edifice. You see many things circulating, many papers from many countries. Nothing should compel you to think that some of this will be the final decision. The final proposal will be done by the Commission, keeping in mind the need not only for consensus, not only for win-win approaches, but also the need of efficiency. We will not put forward something that would be conducive to an agreement that would be unworkable in practice. And I even take a step further. I think we shall not put anything forward unless, through this listening tour and through this talking to everybody, we identify a landing zone on the Pact. Why is it important? Because Europe cannot allow itself to fail twice on this subject. A failure would be a major failure for Europe that would shape the way people view the European Union, and this is a risk that we're not ready to take. So we would exhaust every margin of goodwill, of contribution, of input to get it right. And I could probably go a step further, and say that we sense from this early round of contacts with governments and members here that there is a certain positivity surfacing. The political atmospherics is different now. This is the beginning of a new cycle. This is a fresh beginning. People make an effort to put as much goodwill as they can into this edifice. We have political developments in certain member states that are conducive to an agreement, and we hope that when we come to you sometime next spring, we'll come to you with something that makes sense. Now, let's go to some specific issues raised. First, on Brexit. It is clear that security would be one of the key issues in the future relationship with the United Kingdom. Security would be, if I may call it like this, the vital minimum in any future arrangement, any future agreement with the United Kingdom in the post-Brexit horizon. At the same time, one should not forget that the United Kingdom will be a third country and will not be a Schengen member. So clearly, there will be no depth of relationship that could be comparable to membership. That's clear. But we shall profile the United Kingdom as a strategic partner on security matters and will work to ensure that during the transition period we'll find the best possible way for the future relationship. Now, on Croatia, we are well aware of these allegations of mistreatment, and we take such incidents very, very seriously. When it comes to Croatia, the protection of human rights of asylum seekers and of other migrants, the allegations of use of force by law enforcement officials at the border and of denial of access to the asylum procedures need to be discussed seriously and addressed convincingly. We are in close contact with the Croatian authorities, and Commissioner Johansson informed me yesterday that she discussed this extensively with the Croatian minister, who have committed to investigate allegations of mistreatment. So this is something that we take very, very seriously. On NGOs, I said during the hearing, and I repeat again, that for us, NGOs are part of the solution. They're not the problem. And we have to make sure that NGOs who perform commendable work in the Mediterranean, their operations have to be protected, safeguarded, but also implemented within a framework of predictability that allows the management of these situations to be effective and convincing. We had this search and rescue agreement, or mini agreement, if you like, in October in Malta, with certain member states involved. This, unfortunately, did not find agreement in the Council. In a way, this is easy to understand, because member states are now expecting for the Pact to provide the overall solution. But in terms of search and rescue in the Mediterranean, the work of the NGOs, it is clear that we need a structured solution. We do not need ad hoc situations that have not helped us in the past and have not made justice to Europe. Now, I'm coming to Greece. I said repeatedly that the situation in the islands is not one that we want to see. I said personally that Moria is hurting me as a European and as a Greek, but at the same time, I think that we should have the courage to see and say that Greece is standing alone on behalf of Europe, managing an unprecedented migratory flow, which without a systemic improvement through burden sharing and enhanced solidarity will never, never provide the adequate solutions. So we can, from Strasbourg or from Brussels, do diagnostics, but we have also to be practical and meaningful and give them all the solidarity they would need, not only in terms of financial resources and ad hoc arrangements during the crisis, but also in terms of the Pact and the reform of the asylum laws, because without a meaningful reform of our asylum laws, Greece and our member states of first entry will never, never be able to cope. Now, on inclusion, integration, I'm hopeful that Europe will do much better on inclusion and integration in the years to come, First of all, because I think that gradually our societies realize that this is a need, a priority. Secondly, because these new Europeans around us would claim the rights that we owe them. Thirdly, because the European Social Fund Plus will now cover, as you know, under our new proposal for the next financial framework, the long-term inclusion. So we'll have much more money from the EU budget to address these issues than through the migration funds before that. That would only allow us short-term integration. So overall, I'm very positive on the inclusion side. I still have 4 minutes. So let me say on Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and the way we go about it, part of my, probably this you don't know because it happened after my hearing, but in a final correction of my portfolio, the equality side, Helena Dalli's portfolio, was transferred to Vice President Jourova, and the Article 17 dialogue for EU dialogue with the churches and the non-confessional organizations on the fight against anti-Semitism came to me. For me, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and everything that pertains to hate speech is totally incompatible with the European way of life. I would reverse this argument and say what defines us is precisely that we manage to become societies where these pathologies are something that are unacceptable. I understand and I agree that there is an increasing danger both on Islamophobia and on anti-Semitism. I'm determined to activate all measures at my disposal. We will have a regular dialogue with these communities, and I would very much hope, including members of this committee, to engage positively in addressing these issues.
Vice President Schinas, we thank you for your efforts. Of course, we much appreciate that you have fulfilled to your very best the time available, but I understand there will be a quick 30 additional seconds, no more than that, from Mrs. Sippel, and 30 seconds back to you. I suggest you have in mind there is some supplementary comment, but it will be no more than 30 seconds, please.
I know they mix Mrs. Sippel and me up all the time.
Mrs. Intveld. Mrs. Intveld. I keep confusing. I'm sorry.
I can see why. No, just thank you very much for your extensive reply. Just one small remark to something you said at the start about domestic violence, which claims 3,000 victims or more every year, which is not a small matter. And you said, I'm going to tackle this with the equality strategy. No. It's an issue of public security. If there are 3,000 people, women, dead because of violence, it's a public security matter. It's not a gender equality matter.
Point taken.
And just to conclude, let me remind you all that at the beginning of 2020, we are to retake the state of the play of negotiations on exchange of personal data between Europol and at least 8 Middle East and Africa countries, especially Turkey, for which written information is awaited from the Commission. We are expecting to have that information in time. Second, we are inviting Vice President Schinas again end of January in order to debrief us on the final track of that EU member states tour in which you are engaging with Commissioner Johansson. That should be concluded by then. And third, LIBE coordinators have decided to send a letter to the Commission in view of the Asylum and Migration Pact. That will be handled in January, and we will be discussing that. Again, surely there will be time to retake the issue of legal pathways that you have seen is so much important for many of the questions that have been raised. We're expecting the Commission to tackle this issue of opening up legal pathways with the occasion of coming up to the final draft of the Asylum and Migration Pact. But we thank you. I think we have done it in time. Minister Turpulainen from the Finnish presidency and Commissioner Reinders are waiting for the turn. We thank so much Vice President Schinas. We thank you for having exhausted the time available. We wish you well, and particularly wish you Merry Christmas, in case we don't see you no more.
Thank you.
Before the end of the year. Before the end of the year. Thank you so much. Now,